Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching World Today. US President Donald Trump's 25% additional tariff bomb on India has stoked a massive political storm. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi has given a clear message to the United States. No compromise on the interest of farmers. Here is a news report.
August 7th and Trump's sweeping tariffs across the world have come into effect. US President Donald Trump on his Truth Social said the move is bringing in billions of dollars into the United States of America. The US President had announced a revised list of tariffs for its trading partners and the deadline was extended to August 7th. India was hit by an additional 25% tariffs for purchasing oil and energy from Russia, which now totals up to 50%. The base tariff of 25% takes effect from August 7th, whereas additional tariff charge begins from August 27th after a 21-day period. India and Brazil both face 50% tariff, the highest in the world. The tariff imposition on India is expected to hit major industries. These include textile clothing, gems and jewelry, leather and footwear, animal products, chemicals, electrical and mechanical machinery. Prime Minister Narendra Modi sent out a strong message a day after Trump imposed additional tariffs on India. Prime Minister said the country will never compromise with the interests of its farmers and fishermen. Prime Minister also added that he knows that he will have to pay the price and he was ready to do it for the farmers.
भारत अपने किसानों के, पशुपालकों के और मछुआरे भाई बहनों के हितों के साथ कभी भी समझौता नहीं करेगा और मैं जानता हूं व्यक्तिगत रूप से मुझे बहुत बड़ी कीमत चुकानी पड़ेगी, लेकिन मैं इसके लिए तैयार हूं.
The products exempted from the tariffs include pharma, crude oil, refined fuels, natural gas, coal and electricity, critical minerals, electronic goods such as computers, tablets, smartphones, solid-state drives, flat panel displays and integrated circuits. As part of Trump's pressure tactics on tech firms to invest in the US, the president has threatened to impose 100% tariff on chips and semiconductors produced outside US. This has led Apple to announce a new $100 billion commitment to America, a significant acceleration of its US investment that now totals $600 billion over the next 4 years. Meanwhile, Trump has not announced any additional tariff on China. Trump, when asked why did he single out India and imposed additional tariffs for doing business with Russia while China too does so, he said more of secondary sanctions were coming.
Indian officials have said that there are other countries that are buying Russian oil.
It's okay.
Like China, for instance,
It's
buys
okay.
more.
Yeah.
Why are you singling India out for these additional sanctions?
It's only been 8 hours, so let's see what happens over the next.
More secondary sanctions
you're going to see a lot more.
So this is a taste of
You're
what's
going to
to
see a
come.
lot more. You're going to see so much secondary sanctions.
Other economies are in talks with the US to reach a consensus on lowering the tariff rates, though UK, Japan, South Korea and the EU have struck a deal. Canada got a tariff raise from 25% to 35%. Trump said Canada has failed to curb the flow of the fentanyl and other drugs across the US border. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
So what is the way forward? How to deal with US President Donald Trump and how the Indian American community is bracing for these south winds. I'm being joined by Mr. Palash Gupta, who is the Commission Chair of Delaware Association of American Business Association from Wilmington, Delaware, a state from where the US had its previous president, Joe Biden. Welcome to Well Today, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you, Pranay ji. Thank you for having me on your channel. And Tell me. The topic of the discussion right now is the
Yes.
tariffs, and
Definitely, Mr. Gupta, I wanted to come to this issue only, that how Indian American community is trying to brace with the situation, because winds are already blowing south in India-US relation, and especially with President Donald Trump and his harsh stance vis-a-vis India-US relations.
So my evaluation of the situation is that we don't need to be panicked right now. There is a team from US visiting India in next couple of weeks. There will be negotiations between the Indian team and the US team. I would suggest there should be, I know we should put our ego aside and we should work for the consumers, that what is good for both the consumers in the US as well as in India. There will be a very optimistic outcome with that negotiations. And what we need to see that how this thing started, why President Trump is singling out India right now, with right now China, European Union, Turkey, they all are buying Russian energy. But why he is singling out India recently after he took office? Prime Minister Modi came here. They had a very
But
fruitful
Mr. Gupta, you are
meeting and
there in the
very
United
good
States.
friends.
This is the same question everyone in India is asking from the US, interlocutors, that what is the problem here? Because EU is buying, Turkey is buying, China is buying. Why US is singling out India here?
So that is exactly what I was coming to, that when Prime Minister Modi came here, they had a very nice meeting. It was a very productive meeting. And then between that meeting and today, in this 2 months, something has happened which we don't know, and where President Trump has taken this harsh decision against India. We need to evaluate our foreign policy. I know our external affairs minister, our ambassador in US, the consulate generals, the Indian diaspora, everybody is trying to figure out and how to strengthen the US-India relationship. We have a very vibrant diaspora in every state here. So between the visit and right now, currently, what has happened that has taken a severe downturn on our India-US relations is a very important factor which we all need to evaluate. And I'm pretty sure Prime Minister Modi and his team are seriously thinking about that, how we can make sure that there is a win-win situation between both the countries.
But Mr. Gupta, as far as the business community is concerned, since you deal with the Indian Americans who are there in business in the United States, how the Indian American businessmen are trying to brace up with the situation of the logistic supply chain disruption, because this is going to disrupt a lot of import and export. So how are you guys trying to cope up with the situation?
See, right now it is too early to say what will be the outcome, because nothing is solid right now. It's all negotiations right now going on. President Trump is meeting with President Putin recently. Very soon they are going to have a dialogue with each other. The equations between US and Russia might change. US is still in negotiations with China as well. So let's not jump guns and come to any conclusion that India has been singled out right now. Yes. See, President Trump knows.
So you mean to say
that
that there is still scope for negotiation and a solution and a deal?
I am very sure about that. I'm very optimistic. And I will tell you, President Trump knows, and he has openly mentioned this, that Prime Minister Modi is a very tough negotiator. He knows how India negotiates with US. India also puts a lot of tariffs on US goods. So this is like a negotiating terms. He knows how India, negotiates things from his past experience. So I think he has started with 50%. There will be an amicable number coming up between both the countries very soon. We don't need to be panicked. As I mentioned, that the situations changes every day. There will be something between US-Russia relations very soon. Right now, President Putin and Trump will come to some agreement. So I think it will be a win-win situation for all of us very soon. It's all about putting our egos out of the table and negotiating for the consumers of both the countries, and we will see a good result.
Mr. Gupta, we can end this conversation on this very optimistic and a positive note, that there's still a scope for a deal between India and US, and a solution can be reached. Thank you very much for joining this conversation.
Sure, thank you.
And moving ahead, we are getting a big news, a breaking news, because Prime Minister Narendra Modi received a phone call from the Brazilian President Lula da Silva. as Brazil and India are two countries facing 50% tariff in the sweeping tariff announcement of US President Donald Trump. Both the leaders spoke over phone as agreed, because as announced by the Brazilian President Lula da Silva, he's going to call up Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So that phone call happened. The two leaders agreed to enhance the cooperation in trade, technology, energy, defense, agriculture, health, and people-to-people ties. The Brazilian press release also mentioned that the two leaders also discussed the unilateral tariffs of United States imposed by United States. However, the Indian press release doesn't mention about this very fact or this discussion on unilateral tariffs imposed by the United States. However, both leaders recently met on the sidelines of the BRICS summit, which recently happened in Brazil. Brazil was the host of BRICS, and now the baton has been transferred to India. Now India is chair of BRICS. So this is a big development after the US tariff goes into effect. Both Brazilian President and Prime Minister Narendra Modi had a phone call, and this is a very significant phone call because both India and Brazil faces 50% tariffs announced by US President Donald Trump. Thank you, Farida, for all these details. And moving on to another big development coming from Moscow, because after months of anticipation, the much-awaited meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin is finally on the horizon. The Kremlin has officially confirmed that an agreement has been reached for the two leaders to meet in coming days. And most likely, this meeting may take place in August itself. This will mark the first summit between the two leaders since 2021. The confirmation came a day after Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, who visited Moscow and had a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and as well as his close friend and investment chief. Meanwhile, the Russian President Vladimir Putin met UAE, United Arab Emirates President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and said that it was important for the two of them to discuss the regional security issues. He later also stated that the UAE is one of the suitable places to hold a meeting with US President Donald Trump. While he stated that he was not, on the whole, against the idea of meeting Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, but he also added that certain conditions should be created for such a meeting. He stressed that the current situation was far from being ready for it. Meanwhile, the US President Donald Trump had earlier suggested of holding a trilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Russian Direct Investment Fund and President Putin's investment envoy, Kirill Dmitriev, said that the two leaders' meeting will be a great opportunity to convey Russia's position to the US president.
Excuse me for interrupting such an interesting incursion, but in light of the recent news about your possible meeting with Trump, I would like to ask you, who was the initiator of the summit? Both sides showed their interest. Who said what first does not matter. We have a lot of friends that are ready to help us organize such an event. Here is one of our friends, the President of United Arab Emirates. I think we will decide, but this could be one of the suitable venues. And what about Zelensky? Will you hold meeting with him? I have been repeatedly saying that I, in general, have nothing against it. This is possible, but before that, certain conditions could be created, and unfortunately, we are still far from creating such conditions.
Putin and Zelensky agreed to a summit yet, and where and when would that be? What would
Well,
that
there's a very good prospect that they will, and we haven't determined where, but we had some very good talks with President Putin today, and there's a very good chance that we could be ending the end of that road. That road was long and continues to be long, but there's a good chance that there will be a meeting very soon.
US President Donald Trump has hit India with a 50% tariff over Russian oil import. But Apple, the mobile phone manufacturer, was notably exempted. This came just days after CEO Tim Cook gave Trump a custom gold-mounted gift. Is this a coincidence or a strategy? You decide.
even as President Trump hits India with a 50% total tariff penalty for its continued purchase of Russian oil, one company with substantial stakes in India seems to have walked free: Apple, which is going out of its way to woo Trump. It's a moment of high optics days before a sweeping economic order on semiconductors. Apple CEO Tim Cook handed over a custom-made gift to Trump: a glass statue mounted on 24-karat gold crafted by a US Marine veteran. Cook called it a tribute, a token of American craftsmanship and innovation. But the timing raises eyebrows, because right after that symbolic gesture, Trump's new tariff order exempted Apple from the fresh penalties. While most Indian imports now face a total 50% duty, Apple's flagship products, often made in India, have been given a clean pass, at least for the time being. Trump has meanwhile threatened a 100% tariff on imported chips and semiconductors, a move that could disrupt global tech supply chains. But Apple may already be ahead of that curve. Soon after the White House event, Cook announced Apple would invest an additional $100 billion into US jobs and manufacturing, taking its total US investment commitment to $600 billion.
Today, Apple is announcing that it will invest $600 billion, that's with a B, in the United States over the next 4 years. That's $100 billion more than they were originally going to invest. And this is the largest investment Apple has ever made in America and anywhere else. And it's just an honor to have you.
So was it just a generous gift or a golden bribe wrapped in patriotism? Bureau Report, India Today.
And now, from the updates of trade tensions, let's move on to the conflict zone of West Asia. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has once again stated that Israel intends to take over the military control of Gaza and will eventually hand it over to Arab forces that will govern it properly. But he is now facing the internal dissent. Here is a report.
Amid growing international pressure to halt its ongoing offensive in Gaza, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is now facing internal dissent. The Chief of Staff of the Israel Defense Forces, Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir, has openly opposed Netanyahu's plan to fully occupy the Gaza Strip. The disagreement reportedly came to light after a high-level meeting between Netanyahu and his top security officials. Lieutenant General Zamir warned that occupying Gaza would entangle Israeli forces in prolonged conflict, risk the lives of remaining hostages, and place an unsustainable burden on the military. The tensions escalated further after Netanyahu's son, Yair Netanyahu, accused Zamir of plotting a coup via a post on social media. Meanwhile, some Israeli officials have also questioned Zamir's motives for opposing the Prime Minister's Gaza strategy. On the ground, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to worsen. At least 4 children have died due to starvation, highlighting the growing severity of conditions in the war-torn enclave. In a separate development, a media report claims that US-based consulting firm Boston Consulting Group had drafted a proposal to relocate Palestinians to Somalia. The report says that the model was created for a group of Israeli businessmen who were exploring plans for Gaza's reconstruction post-conflict. The BCG has also been involved in establishing the US and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which manages aid distribution points within the Gaza Strip. Earlier this year, US President Donald Trump had also suggested relocating Gazans to third countries, while proposing to transform the coastal enclave into the Riviera of the Middle East. With Neha Kumari, Bureau Report, India Today.
And now some news from the space sector as well. NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore has retired, months after returning from a high-profile mission that kept him in space far longer than the planned. Wilmore, who spent 9 months aboard International Space Station with fellow astronaut Sunita Williams, has stepped down after a distinguished 25-year career. The pair piloted the first crewed flight of Boeing Starliner space aircraft, and mission that captured the global headlines due to multiple in-flight issues, including thruster failures and gas leaks. A decorated US Navy captain, Wilmer flew in 4 different spacecraft and logged 464 days in the space. Meanwhile, NASA's interim administrator, Sean Duffy, has announced the plans to deploy a nuclear reactor on the moon by the year 2030. Duffy also noted that a specific region of the lunar surface holds significant strategic value, an area both the US and China are eyeing it. And that's all we have in today's edition of World Today. For more international stories, do log on to India Today Global. Good night and take care.